Hello everyone and welcome to Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate that. I only have two favors as we start out. One, whenever you're shopping for stuff, use my affiliate links. And two, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. All right, what do we have here today? These are two new units from Aoocci. They are the BM7 and the BM6. So what these are they are plug and play Apple CarPlay and Android Auto tablets that have direct integration to most common models of BMW motorcycles. So today I'm going to review both of these units and I'm going to tell you why I've completely stopped in the past year. I've completely stopped using traditional GPS devices like the Garmin Zumo XT, the BMW Navigator, and other devices like that. Now, I want to be clear, this video is sponsored by Aoocci. However, I only agreed to the sponsorship after they sent me the units and I tested them both out for a while, making sure that I was okay in terms of recommending them. Also, in terms of the sponsorship, I was able to negotiate for all of you a discount that is better than the discount that you're going to see advertised anywhere else, including their own website. So if you do decide to go ahead and purchase an Aoocci unit, then please use my links or my discount codes, and all of the current most up-to-date information on that will be below in the description and the pinned comment to this video. Now, speaking of the pricing, both of these units after my discount come in around or just under the $300 mark, making them extremely competitive with other units out there. I will have, again, the most current discount information down below and make sure that you use that. I will also link below to a small little buyer's guide document I put together comparing these units to their closest competitors, so the Carpuride, the Chigee, the Motortablet, and a few other devices like that. So check that out if you're interested. Now, before we go any further, I also want to point out that Aoocci makes, if you don't ride a BMW motorcycle, and a lot of people of course don't, they do make universal units that you can install on almost any motorcycle out there. So if you're looking to add Apple CarPlay and Android Auto functionality for navigation and infotainment and communication and phone calls to your motorcycle, which is something that I think many motorcycle riders are looking to do, then please know that Aoocci does make universal units, some of which I have reviewed, and I will link those reviews below and I will put any information about that below. But please keep them in mind even if you don't have a BMW motorcycle. All right, so what's the brief overview of the BM7 and the BM6? So again, these are Apple CarPlay and Android Auto units for navigation and communication. They fully integrate into the factory BMW controls, including the Wonder Wheel. They are IP67 rated for waterproofing. They have optional add-on tire pressure monitoring sensors if your bike didn't happen to come with tire pressure sensors from the factory. They have automatic brightness control, and interesting, they have their own integrated GPS receivers inside the units. Okay, so a note about compatibility. It is incredibly important that just because you have a BMW motorcycle, you don't just order this unit or even the Carpurides or other ones like that. You need to go onto the web page for the unit that you're looking at and confirm that it's going to work with your bike. There are certain BMW models that for physical size reasons, because of where the display mounts, or for software integration reasons, that these units may not work on your particular bike. They do tend to work for most of the popular models, especially the GSs, but please don't order it until you check the compatibility chart. All right, I want to talk about screen size differences. So for these units, right here, this is a 7-inch screen, the BM7. This is the 6-inch screen, the BM6. I have also tested in the past on BMW motorcycles and other bikes, 5-inch versions of similar devices. Let me give you my honest take on the screen size issue. I strongly recommend that you consider going with the 7-inch screen, whether you get the BM7 from Aoocci or get one of the competitive units. I have tested this a lot. I've conferred with my friends and other people who ride BMW motorcycles and also use units like this, and we all tend to agree that having the larger 7-inch screen, it makes life a lot easier. The icons are bigger in your Android Auto, the map's easier to use, the text is larger. It just, that extra screen size It's not too big in the way that it would like block the TFT or hit the windscreen. I don't have any issues with that on any of the bikes that I've tested it on, and I really find that I greatly benefit from the larger 7-inch device. Now, there are, having said that, some people who still like the 6-inch screen because it looks a little bit more, I guess, integrated with the bike being a tiny bit smaller than the BMW TFT. It hides behind the windscreen a little bit better, and it still is totally functional and usable, and the screen is very good. But I just find, particularly in Android Auto, and I can't speak for Apple CarPlay because I'm an Android user, but for Android Auto, I find sometimes the icons in your navigation and in going to different apps can be a little bit small, especially when you're using the touchscreen with gloves, and I really highly recommend you consider going to the 7-inch screen. And the truth is, the price difference is so tiny. You're talking about a $10 to $20 price difference. So basically, I strongly suggest you go with the 7-inch versions. And what I've seen from the sales on the Carpuride units that I've also worked with and reviewed is almost everybody universally has decided to go with the 7-inch unit. Speaking of the 5-inch units that we've seen in the past from Chigee and others, now that I've used the larger screens, I just find the 5-inch ones to be too small. Okay, let's talk about installation. I mean, you get this unit in the box, you open up the box, it's so basic because you're lucky if you ride a BMW because you have the factory navigation cradle, which means no wiring. Really, all you have to do is take it out of the box and clip it onto your bike, lock it with the key, pair it to your phone, which takes just a few seconds, and right away. And you have full functionality of using whatever applications you want to mirror from your phone. It also will connect very seamlessly to your helmet Bluetooth communicator. I don't care what brand you use, Cardo, Senna, other brands, it's going to work just fine in terms of that, and it will connect to just about anything. So installation, especially with these BMW units, is super, super easy. Now they do provide a small screwdriver, which is used to take off this little cover down here, which gives you access to a USB port if you needed to power the unit when it's off the bike. It also gives you access to use an SD card, which can be used to update the firmware, which we'll talk about later, or if you want to like customize the splash screen, like the little info screen when it starts up. But a lot of people will never even need to take that cover off. Let's talk about the devices in practice. So out on the bike, riding it, and I've tested both of these a lot over the past several weeks on my GS here. So using it with gloves, a lot of people have the concern of glove friendliness touchscreens. I can report that these have no issues with a lot of different gloves that I've tried. I have a lot of gloves, okay, because I test gear as well. I've had no issues with the gloves using the touchscreens, which is really good news. And these work better than my Samsung Galaxy phone. So just to give you that point of reference there. It's funny, the touchscreen, when I use my finger and not the glove, I seem like sometimes I have to hit it twice, but maybe I'm just not pressing hard enough. Also, when I'm filming for things like this, sometimes I'm doing it at an angle and maybe it doesn't press just right, so you might see that. But in general, I've had no issues with the touchscreen functionality. Of course, you can also, with the BMW motorcycles, use your Wonder Wheel and use your controls, like your turn signal button and I forget whatever, yeah, the menu button to toggle into it to control the screens. Now, if you've used these, you already know it's not perfect in terms of controlling everything on Android Auto or Apple CarPlay through that Wonder Wheel. There are certain functions that in certain apps that may not work as well with that, and you still end up a lot of times pushing the touch screen while you're riding to go ahead and make a selection or change something. But that's very easy to do, and it's really no downside to that. But I just want to let you know, don't expect to do absolutely everything with the Wonder Wheel or the factory controls on the handlebar. A few other things about the Aoocci I like. You can customize the units for your speed, your temperature, your tire pressure, things like that, whether you're metric or imperial or whatever it is. You can also configure the limits for the automatic brightness, and we'll talk about how that works here in a minute. You also have what they call an auxiliary button, which you can turn off or on. I like having it on. That's a cool extra feature, and you can move that around the screen, and at any point when you're using the unit, no matter what mode you're in, you can press that and it will give you the automatic brightness setting, or change the brightness if you want to change the brightness right there without having to get back out of Android Auto or CarPlay and go into the menu. You can do it right from there, or you can go to the home screen. So that's a really clever thing they added versus the competitors, which is that auxiliary button. All right, let's get in and start to talk about how the Aooccis compare to the competitors. So one thing I try to do here at Big Rock Moto is test as many of these types of devices as I realistically can to give you the different videos, and you can choose what's best for you, right? So I try to do that. So I've tested, let's talk about the Carpuride. The Carpurides have been incredibly successful from a sales point of view for the company. The most common model they sell is the W702BS. And as a general overview, it works very similar to this Aoocci BM7. However, I have found a few small advantages that I think the Aoocci has, and maybe this is because the Aoocci is a slightly newer unit that's just coming out, whereas the Carpuride has been out for, what, 9 months or something like that, maybe a little bit more. So they have a couple advantages. I do find that the responsiveness, maybe the software behind the scenes here, is a tiny bit faster and more responsive on the Aoocci, but it's not a huge difference. The touchscreen responsiveness I just find to be maybe a tiny bit better as well on the Aoocci. The Aooccis have a built-in GPS receiver, and I'll talk about that in a minute because it's not very useful, at least now, unless they provide an update with the mapping software to give you a way to use that GPS signal, but at least they do have GPS receivers built into them, and I do not believe that the Carpuride has that. Another cool thing with these that the Carpuride doesn't offer is if you ride a motorcycle, this is going to apply to people who are looking at these who don't ride BMWs, but even if you do have a BMW, but your bike doesn't have tire pressure monitor sensors, and that's something you want to add, well, for a very tiny amount, a very reasonable amount of upgrade money, you can buy these with the tire pressure monitor sensors, which then integrate right into the display, which is really, really cool to have that, and the Carpuride does not offer that. I think this is going to make this more of a competitor to the more fully featured Chigee, more expensive, by the way, Chigee units, and we'll talk about those in a second. The other thing I like about these is they give you that auxiliary button, which gives you quick access to the brightness and to the home screen, which the Carpuride does not have. So I honestly think that as of I'm filming this right now in October 2025, it is possible, of course, that Carpuride could come out with an update of a more upgraded unit anytime, as I'm saying this, and then they could jump ahead. But for now, I think honestly, I would say maybe these units are just a tiny bit ahead of the Carpurides, but they're similar. And if you have Carpuride 702 and you're happy with it, I don't see really any need to change and get this. What about versus the Chigee units? I've reviewed those. I have videos on those, and maybe I'll link those below. So let's talk about the AIO6, which is the most recent one I did. The thing with the AIO6, the reason people get that is you can get different mounts and move it between different motorcycles, right? So that's an advantage there. You can get dash cameras with the AIO6. You can add on. So the AIO6 gives you that modularity. You can add on all the options and things you want and build a really very highly featured system if that's something that you're looking at. You can also get the unit, the Aoocci with built-in 4G connectivity for your cell phone, which gives you bike security cameras and bike monitoring and anti-theft features, which of course you're not doing with either this or the Carpuride. So again, the Aoocci is for the power users who really want to add a ton of stuff, but I will warn you, they become unbelievably expensive when you're adding all that stuff. You know, $600, $700, $800 for some of those configurations. It really gets up there, but it could be an option depending on what you're looking for. Now, what about the old AIO5 Play for BMW? They do still offer that unit. However, I honestly have to say that I will give them credit for coming out with that first before any of these other brands did. And I reviewed it and it was popular then. But now that we've seen the Carpuride and we've seen this now, for $500 for the 5-inch screen, which is too small in my opinion for the Chigee, I'm not really seeing the value there compared to something like this. What about the Motortablet? So I've asked them if they could send me one to review it, and I'll make a video on that just for fairness sake to do it. That unit is very similar in functionality to this, and the Carpuride, it offers a 6-inch screen and it's $349. So again, I don't know that I'm really seeing the value with that. I would much rather get the 7-inch screen on this for $300 after my discount instead of paying $350 for the Motortablet. But I'll reserve judgment until I can get that unit for testing, and I have asked for that unit for testing. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said why I prefer using these, and I've completely transitioned to using these things, this type of device, versus a traditional GPS. So let's talk about how they compare. So these units, they do rely on your cell phone connection for the location and for the applications for doing anything. The reason that some people still like the Garmin's, although I don't, is that they have their completely standalone, dedicated mapping units with their own GPS receiver and their own mapping software. So it does not need to be connected to your cell phone at all to function. And for some people, that sort of not being dependent on their phone is very important to them, and that's something they want. I have not found that to be something that I care about anymore, and I just don't think that it matters. And I'm not willing to pay any more, the $500, $600, $700, whatever it is, for a BMW Navigator, which is just a rebranded Garmin, or Garmin Zumo XT. I still have an XT and an XT2. They sit in my shed in a box collecting cobwebs because I much prefer using these. So let's talk more about it. So again, those are better if you don't want to rely on your cell phone at all. However, most people out there, and I get to see this because I see what's selling out there through all the affiliate programs I have, most people, by and large, are moving to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay based units like this. The main reason for that is it's convenient. It's more convenient to, the thing is, you already know how to use your phone and the apps on your phone. You've already got the apps on your phone. You may already have GPS tracks. You have your all different applications you want to use depending on what you're doing. If it's in traffic in the city, maybe using Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, other things like that. For off-road navigation, I like Onyx Off-Road. I like Gaia GPS. There's Rever. You can use the option of using so many different apps that, in my opinion, offer much more features and functionality and are easier to use because you're already doing stuff on your phone and just have that mirror to these larger screens. To me, that is far superior than using an antiquated, clunky old interface on the Garmin's and things like that. Plus, I can download a GPS file while I'm on my phone. It goes into my mapping application on the phone, and then everything's already on here. It's done. I don't have to try to transfer a file from my phone or from my computer to the Garmin. Like, I'm done with that. I'm over it. Now, what a lot of people get wrong about these is they think that because they're reliant on a cell phone connection that you cannot use them out of cell phone service range. So for adventure riding, out in the wilderness, no cell phone service, which I do a lot because of where I live and I ride those places, you absolutely can, and people do use these. The way you do it is, all you have to do is download the maps into your whatever mapping application you plan to use for your ride. Make sure you've downloaded offline maps and have them in the cell phone in the app. That's it. That's all you got to do. Because your cell phone always has a location signal, even if there's zero cell service. So these work great out of cell phone range, and that's a misconception that a lot of people have. Now, are there some downsides to using this style of unit? Absolutely. First is that, of course, you are reliant on your cell phone to be functioning and charged and working properly. So you do need that. Now, also, using the Android Auto, Apple CarPlay features, and it also depends what app you're running through that. In particular, I found Gaia to be a real battery drainer on terms of the apps, is that you probably should keep your phone on a charger, whether you use a handlebar mount with a charger, you can get a wireless charger, plug in, whatever you want, or you plug it in a tank bag or whatever you prefer to do, maybe in a backpack with a little portable charger, power bank, which a lot of people have. However you choose to do that, just be aware that it is going to drain your phone battery a little bit faster when you're using CarPlay or Android Auto. So that is something that you need to take into account. So hopefully your bike has a USB port or somewhere for you, other way for you to charge your phone. Another thing I found with these is that sometimes, depending on the app you're using, again, and I found Gaia to be the worst with this, is that it can make your phone hot. Some people have had overheating in the summer especially. It depends what phone you have, what app you're using, and all the environmental conditions. Some people have had the overheating. I haven't had it overheat to where it wouldn't work, but I have had the phone get pretty hot. Now, are there particular areas of improvement that I would have on the Aoocci units? Yes, I do have a few notes that I think that they can make these better. The first thing is that testing these at night, a lot of people have complained about the Carpurides being a little bit finicky with the automatic brightness not working quite right in the nighttime conditions. These work pretty well, and it does give you a selection of the range you want it to use for the automatic brightness. However, I feel like it still tends to be a little bit too much on the brighter side for my taste, but I ride in dark countryside areas, and you may ride more in the urban areas where it'll be fine, and that's probably what it's more designed for. But I feel like the automatic brightness could go a little bit lower at night for riding in super dark areas where you just don't want that brightness coming from the screen. Also, I will say Google Maps, at least through Android Auto, and I can't speak for Apple users, but it seems like there's a glitch with Google Maps on Android Auto where it won't go into the night display mode on these tablets. The same thing with the Carpurides and others I've used. Like in my truck or my car and on my phone at nighttime, the map goes into like a dark mode, which is easier on your eyes, but doesn't seem to work for some reason when going through these tablets, and I can't figure that out. Another downside to these I think they could improve is that although they did give you a GPS receiver built into the units, which is great, forward thinking, but then there's no mapping application to be able to use the GPS signal. And I have not found a way, and let me know if you have, but I've not found a way to use the GPS signal from the device itself to then pick that up in something like Gaia or Android Auto or Google Maps or whatever. So I found no way to actually really utilize the GPS signal, so it still is only pulling the GPS location signal from your cell phone. One other thing I think that they could improve is that if you do have to update the firmware for any reason, the current process that they have is a little bit tricky. You will have to get a SD card and then download this file and then get this little program to put it on the SD card, load it into here. It's just it doesn't feel like the greatest process for 2025 with all the technology we have. I feel like you should be able to plug into your computer and update, or just be over the air or something like that. So I would really like to see that improvement going forward. When I got this, I did have to update the firmware on the BM6, but I got a very early unit, so I don't think you're going to have that problem. When I got the BM7 shortly after that, it already had the latest one in it, and I have had no issues in terms of needing to update the firmware. All right, well, this video has probably been longer than I wanted to, but I really want to give you all the information to make a good purchasing decision here because it's still a lot of money. I do think for around the $300 mark that these are a slam dunk. They've improved, I think, a tiny bit over some of the competitors that we've seen out there coming in at the same price point. I think if you want to add a solution to your BMW or to any motorcycle, I just don't see how you can go wrong with something like this, especially for the price point it comes in at. So again, check down below for the information for the discount or the link that I will have, and I will keep that updated with whatever the best discount I'm able to negotiate with the company at that time. And that could change depending on what time you're watching the video, so keep that in mind. All right, if you have questions for me, put that down below. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your support and watching. Thanks so much. Ride safe. I'll see you out there.